Hello and welcome to our next unit review, Caladius Grav-Tank. This video is structured to give a profile overview, then drop into some Mathammer to evaluate the two variants, Caladius and Caladius Annihilator, to determine which is optimal, then round out with some unit synergies and tactics. The Caladius is a 225.1 vehicle unit. It's strength 6, toughness 7, 14 wounds and 3 attacks, although you probably won't be getting into combat with it. It also has a 3+ save and a 5++ invulnerable save, along with leadership 9. From 8 to 14 wounds, it has a 14-inch movement range and a 2+ ballistic skill. From 4 to 7 wounds, it reduces to a 10-inch movement range and a 3+ ballistic skill. And finally, from 1 to 3 wounds, it reduces to 8 inches movement range and a 4+ ballistic skill. It has two weapons, a twin Laystrom bolt cannon, range 36 inches, heavy 6, strength 6, AP-2, damage 1, and a twin Adeptus accelerator cannon, range 60 inches, heavy 8, strength 7, AP-3, damage 2. For no extra points, this can be exchanged for a twin Arachnus heavy blaze cannon. This has two weapon profiles, either beam or burst. For beam, it's range 48 inches, heavy 2, strength 9, AP-4, damage D3+3 with the ability to reroll wounds if the target is a vehicle. And for burst, it's range 36 inches, heavy 8, strength 7, AP-2, damage 1. It has 3 abilities: flare shielding, which gives it its 5+ invulnerable save, hover tank, distances are always measured to and from this model's hull, and explodes, does what it says on the tin. When the model is destroyed, roll 1d6 before removing it from play, and on a 6 it explodes, and each unit within 6 inches suffers d3 mortal wounds. It also has the fly keyword, which means it can move over other models when it makes a move. They also ignore vertical distances when moving. Now, to compare these effectively, we will contrast the effectiveness of each possible loadout per 200 points. They will be compared at their effectiveness of killing low toughness, 1 wound models, mid toughness, multi-wound models, and against high toughness vehicles' effective damage. At each stage, we will look at the number of wounds, effective damage, and the translation to models lost, as in the end it doesn't matter how much damage you do if you only need 1 to kill the model. Just a note, when comparing ranged weapons, we will be using their combined models lost for low toughness comparison, and their combined effective damage for high toughness evaluations. At low toughnesses, we are going to compare against several options you may see on the battlefield. We'll start with the classic Toughness 3 model, the Humble Guardsman, moving to everyone's favourite horde, the Toughness 4 Orc Boy, and then onto Toughness 4 2-wound Intercessor Marines, and finally onto Toughness 5 3-wound Heavy Intercessor or Gravis Armoured Marines. Just a note on the unit names, the base option is called the Caladius, whereas the upgraded option with the twin Arachnus Blaze Cannon is called the Caladius Annihilator, as that is what it's sold under on Forge World's site. It's also a nice way to differentiate the variants and a cool name to boot. However, please note that is not the unit's legal name, it is still called the Caladius, whatever variant you use. From the top down, per 200 points for the Caladius Annihilator's twin Laystrom Bolt Cannon, it's got 5.3 shots, of which 4.4 hit, and the twin Arachnus Heavy Blaze Cannon for beam profile has 1.8 shots, of which 1.5 hit, and for burst, 7.1 shots, of which 5.9 hit. Looking now at the base Caladius, per 200 points for its twin Laystrom Bolt Cannon has 5.3 shots, of which 4.4 hit, and the twin Adeptus Accelerator Cannon has 7.1 shots, of which 5.9 hit. Now, let's see what these translate to when we look at the models, starting with a Toughness 3 1-wound Guardsman with a 5+ save. The most effective loadouts are the Caladius Annihilator with burst profile and Caladius, as they're tied at killing 8.6 models. The Caladius Annihilator with the beam profile is the worst option here, as it kills only 4.9 models. This is expected as the beam profile is primarily anti-tank. Looking now to Toughness 4 1-wound Orc Boys. The most effective loadouts are the Caladius Annihilator burst profile and the base Caladius, as they're tied at killing 6.9 models. The Caladius Annihilator beam profile is the worst option as it only kills 4.2 models. The damage is reduced on all options because the twin Laystrom bolt cannons are now wounding on 3s. Looking now to see how these weapons stack up against Toughness 4 2-wound models, using the example of Intercessors or Infiltrators, which are common competitive units. The most effective loadout is the base Caladius, killing 4.3 models. The Caladius Annihilator beam profile rises to second place with its average damage of 5 starting to come into play, killing 3 models, and the burst profile experiences a large fall-off with its 1 damage now working against it, killing only 2.3 models. Taking it up a weight class now and evaluating against Toughness 5 3-wound Heavy Intercessor or Gravis Armoured Marines like Inceptors or Aggressors. The most effective loadout is the base Caladius, once again proving itself to be the most effective anti-elite option with killing 2.9 models. The Caladius Annihilator beam profile holds second place with lower effective damage as it now wounds on 3s, killing 1.6 models, and the burst profile continues its fall from grace, killing only 1.5 models. What this shows is that for killing lower toughness single wound models per 200 points, that the Caladius and the Caladius Annihilator are equal in their efficiency against Toughness 3 and Toughness 4, making them both just as great at anti-horde duties. When looking now to mid-toughness, multi-wound models, the base Caladius is the superior option, killing nearly 40% more models, making it the anti-elite weapon of choice. Moving now to look at higher toughness examples. For these, we are assuming them to have many wounds and also be vehicles, so we'll only be contrasting the combined effective damage from both weapons on each variant. As the results are broadly similar for these, I'm not going to go through it line by line like I've just done, but instead comment on the general trends. For Toughness 6, the base Caladius is still the strongest choice, however this drops to second place at higher toughnesses as the effective damage gradually falls off, at Toughness 7 when it changes to wounding on 4s, and even further at Toughness 8 wounding on 5s. The beam profile strongly represents at Toughness 6, dealing 7.8 effective damage, which as this variant takes first place for Toughness 7 and Toughness 8 only drops to 7.4, because the twin Laestrum bolt cannon starts wounding on 5s. The ability to reroll wounds for the beam profile has resulted in higher effective damage per 200 points. Unsurprisingly, the burst profile of the Caladius brings up the rear as it's primarily a single wound anti-horde machine. What this shows in summation is that the Caladius Annihilator is the superior tank hunter of choice, but the base Caladius deals respectable damage and shouldn't be written off. So over to Synergies now. Starting with the Shield Captain's ability, Inspirational Fighter. This allows you to reroll hit rolls of a 1 made for your friendly Adeptus Custodes units within 6 inches of the Shield Captain. This means you can run a highly mobile fire platform with 2 to 3 Caladiuses and a Shield Captain on jetbike that can move around to beneficial shooting locations and benefit from rerolls to hit. Backline Dreadnought plus Wisdom of the Ancients. You can potentially run a firebase centered around a Telemon or any other Custodes Dreadnought, then have Sagittarium Custodians at the front with 1 to 2 Caladius flanking the Dreadnought. Then using Wisdom of Ancient stratagem on the Telemon would enable you to reroll hit rolls of a 1 until end of phase. Whilst this is pricey, I've seen it run semi-effectively a few times, and it can be used on open boards to shoot into the mid-table whilst holding backline objectives, or used as a rolling fire castle, partially advancing up the board for beneficial sightlines and then planting themselves and raining down fire. It would be quite costly to replicate though in both money, command points and actual points, weighing in at 860 points if using 2 Caladius, and if your opponent has deep strikers, you are incredibly vulnerable unless investing further into chaff units like Sisters of Silence to prevent them getting deep struck and charged. Captain General Trajan Valoris' legendary commander. This is an ability that lets you reroll hit and wound rolls of 1 for friendly Adeptus Custodes units within 6 inches. This is an option for you to combine with a Caladius Variant or 2. However, it's really unlikely to occur as Trajan is an absolute melee monster, so you want him up front with the teleportation assault wing of your army, plus he'd heavily restrict your movement as he's on foot and not a grav mount. Next up, some protection against mortal wound spam, Indomitable Engines. If you're facing mortal wound spam, then using this stratagem, Indomitable Engines can assist, as it allows you on a 5+ to prevent losing that wound. In the current meta, not that great a synergy, but if mortal wound spam is once again to rear its ugly head, this will be vital for protecting your Caladius investment. If you are using the Emissaries Imperator's shield host for your army, it is a bit situational, but you could use their stratagem to turn your Caladius into a backline sniper through the use of the Emperor's Hand stratagem for 1 command point. This allows you to ignore any negative hit, wound and armor penetration modifiers along with any saving throw benefits due to cover as a result of the attack. It's not really a synergy, but more a statement of fact. The actual model itself is rather large, and you can, as required, use it to tactically block line of sight. It is also surprisingly durable, so you could potentially use the model to physically block choke points and force units to carve their way through it, or make it at least a bit harder to get to objectives. And finally, to round out with our final synergy, Blood Game Veterans. This is a stratagem that you can use one command point to target your Caladius with. This means that any unmodified roll of a 6 automatically scores a hit and successfully wounds the target with no wound roll required. Let's take a quick 30-second look at that earlier Mathammer with the impact of adding Blood Game Veterans. What we see across the board is an average 30% extra models killed at Toughness 3 and Toughness 4. For the anti-horde duties, we see 11 and 9.2 models killed, with the Caladius and Caladius Annihilator respectively, which is an extra 3.4 and 2.3 models due to Blood Game Veterans. When looking to elite killing against Toughness 4 2 wound and Toughness 5 3 wound Marines, we see 5.7 and 3.8 models killed, respectively, with the Caladius and Caladius Annihilator, which is an extra 1.4 and 0.9 models due to Blood Game Veterans. Now, moving over to vehicle killing. What we see at Toughness 6 and Toughness 7 for the Caladius is a 36% increase in effective damage, which was surprising, and for the beam profile Caladius Annihilator only a 10% increase. For the Toughness 8, we see, as expected, a 10% increase on the Caladius Annihilator, whereas for the Caladius we see a whopping 50% effective damage increase, as those unmodified 6s auto wound really help you push in that effective damage when you've got 14 shots. So, overall, to round out the synergies, we see that Blood Game Veterans could potentially be useful in some fringe situations. So in conclusion, what we see is that both Caladius variants deal decent damage against all opponents, but are specialised against certain opponent types. They have a variety of synergies that make them viable, and I think they could be a solid competitive unit choice. However, through future videos we will need to explore alternate options for the same role they perform, to evaluate if they are truly cost efficient for their points and not just an awesome model. Just to round out, for those that didn't watch the video, for Toughness 3 or 4 anti-horde, either variant is just as good, as they both kill the same amount of models. For Toughness 4 to 6 elites, the base Caladius is the variant of choice, and finally, for Toughness 7 or 8 vehicle hunting, the Caladius Annihilator is the variant of choice. With the current elite meta, I'd recommend the Caladius, but if it shifts to include hordes and vehicles and knights once again rear their ugly head, then look to switch to the Caladius Annihilator. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment below with your thoughts.